Hello, and welcome to the Regina A. Quick Center for the Arts at St. Bonaventure University. I'm Dr. Rachel Harris, the Executive Director of the Quick Center, and I'm so excited to bring you another inspiring conversation for this episode of What's Happening at the Quick. Joining us today is the extraordinary pianist Jennifer Hayghe, who will perform her program Girl Power on February 23rd at 3 p.m. This performance, presented in association with Friends of Good Music, celebrates music written by, for, or about women and their enduring impact on the world of classical music. Jennifer Hayghe is a celebrated pianist, educator whose performances and research have brought the works of historically marginalized composers to light. From her acclaimed debut at Alice Tully Hall to her teaching at the Brancaleone International Music Festival in Italy, Jennifer continues to inspire audiences worldwide. We'll spend the next hour delving into her journey as an artist, her passion for showcasing diverse repertoire, and what you can expect from her upcoming performance here at the Quick Center. Jennifer, welcome, and thank you for being here. Oh my goodness. I am so excited for your visit. And I have been telling everyone here how much I cherish our friendship and all of our work that we have done together. And I can't wait for everyone here at St. Bonaventure and in our community to watch you perform and share your gifts with them. It is just wonderful that you're here, that you're going to be here.
Thank you, Rachel. I'm so excited to see you. Everybody here wants to know why on earth I'm heading to the Buffalo area in February. And I said, it's because Rachel asked me to. So I'm really excited to bring this program to you all and to come and visit again.
Wonderful. So let's begin with the program Girl Power. When my niece was little, she watched a show called Puppy Power. So that's what I feel with Girl Power. I just love this title. It's such an exciting concept. Could you walk us through the inspiration for this program and what audiences can expect?
Let's walk through the program first. I'm happy to talk about how I put programs together a little bit as well, because I am not good at theme programs. And that used to be my constant joke to people when they said, oh, is there a theme to the program? And I would say, oh, it's an evening of piano music. I don't know. So, but this particular program, as it says in the subtitle, is music that is either by women, written for women, or written about women. So it starts with a beautiful Bach movement transcribed by the great female pianist Dame Myra Hess. There's going to be a set of pieces by Fanny Hensel, who was Mendelssohn's sister, and I am absolutely obsessed by her music right now. There's going to be a set of preludes by a new up-and-coming young Black composer named James Morris. And these pieces were dedicated to me, and I gave the world premiere of them and recorded them as well. So they're fantastic pieces that I'm bringing to you all, and they fall under the category of written for women. The second half of the program is all about women. And so the first piece is going to be the Busoni's Carmen Fantasy, and it's about the great opera star, opera heroine Carmen. The second set of pieces is by a woman. Her name is Mel Boni, and the pieces are part of a collection called Women of Legend. So they're about kind of mythical or legendary women from literature. So you're going to hear about Melisande and Desdemona and Phoebe, the goddess of the moon, and this absolutely fascinating mythical figure, Omphale, who was the queen of Lydia, who enslaved Hercules. It's a terrific story. And And then the final piece on the program is the last scene of Wagner's opera, Tristan and Isolde, and it's transcribed by Franz Liszt, and it's about Isolde singing of her love as Tristan is dying in her arms. So another fabulous piece. So I love the fact that there is this theme and this thread that runs through it, and I thought, well, girl power pretty much sums it up. So that's what's coming.
I absolutely love that you have a little bit of opera on your program. That is fantastic. You have done extensive research on the history of women pianists and composers. What initially drew you to this area of study, and how has it shaped the way you approach your craft as both a performer and an educator?
So, when I was doing my doctorate at Juilliard, I became fascinated with the history of women pianists. I mean, mostly because I am one. And somehow there's this shift between, piano lessons and being in school and all of these women who are studying piano, and then none of them are on the other side actually, making careers. There at the time, certainly there was a very small handful of women pianists that you could name. And so as I started looking into this, I realized there's this incredibly rich history of absolutely amazing women for centuries that we just don't know about. I think they've had to work against centuries of societal norms and expectations. They've had to work against biological imperatives. Only women can give birth to children and expand the population. One of the things that I'm learning more about that I didn't really think about at the time is the fact that there are also anatomical issues, and specifically smaller hands. There's this fascinating movement right now to develop smaller keyboards that would be specifically for people with smaller hands, which is most of the female population. And the fact that since the end of the 19th century, the average piano keyboard size that is made by all manufacturers is actually suited for a larger hand. So it's had some very interesting implications in terms of competitions, in terms of repertoire, and that sort of thing. And so I think all of this really, really spurred my research initially. And in terms of as a performer and an educator, certainly as a performer, as an educator, you just have to be the best if you're a woman, right? You have to have more stamina. You have to be able to multitask and make these difficult life choices. It's had a huge impact on my work with young women, certainly because I can talk to them about all of these things in a way that a lot of my teachers could not. I was very famously Adele Marcus's last student. She was very famously a female teacher who didn't really like working with women. And she said in her experience, most women, she would expend all of this time and energy on their studies, and they would go off and get married and never play the piano again. So she was much harder on her female students, with the idea of if you can withstand the sort of training and the treatment that I'm giving you, then you will have a better chance, as a professional. I try not to do that. I don't find that to be necessarily the most motivational way to teach. But we have a lot of very honest conversations about what it's going to look like, and how to balance your life choices and what you can do when and how much and how this is all going to work. So it's had a huge impact on every part of my career.
Can you talk a little bit about some of the composers featured in your program while sharing their significance in the world of music and why their work is so important to you?
Absolutely. I think walking through the whole program will give you an idea of who these people are. So I'm actually starting the program with Bach, which is something that I haven't done in a million years. That is the standard program order, a real throwback to Clara Schumann, who was one of the first great women pianists. And she was the one who established the traditional concert order program of, Bach and then your sonata and then your romantic work. She also established the maybe not so lovely tradition of performing from memory, which is also a whole nother discussion that we can have. So this particular piece that I'm starting with is an adagio movement from a larger organ toccata, transcribed, as I said, by the great female pianist Dame Myra Hess. And one of Myra Hess's accomplishments took place during World War II when London was being bombed. They closed all of the cultural centers. Any place that people were going to gather in London, everything was closed to avoid mass casualties and deaths. And so she petitioned to start this small noontime series at the National Gallery of Art in London. And they allowed her to do it. I think they expected about 200 people to come to the first concert, and it was over 1,000 who showed up because people in London were so starved for culture and for the arts. And so she put together this series of 1,600 concerts during the war. She performed herself on 170 of them, programmed all the Beethoven sonatas, all of the Mozart piano concertos, just this absolutely stunning collection of works. And there's a fantastic interview with her from a radio broadcast many years ago where she talks about, the bombings happening in the middle of the concerts and how they would cover up the sounds of the bombs approaching and how the diminuendos would work afterwards when the silence came. So, really remarkable figure. It's one of my favorite transcriptions by her. The next set of pieces are some songs for piano by Fanny Hensel. And Fanny Hensel is Mendelssohn's sister. And Mendelssohn, of course, is known for his 48 songs without words that he wrote for piano. And the origins of them were actually conversations and games that he and his sister used to play about, I'm going to play this piece for you and guess what the lyrics would be. And I love Mendelssohn's 48 Songs Without Words. But as I'm discovering more and more of his sister's music, they are so sophisticated, they're so complex, and they're so emotionally poignant. And I'm just very, very obsessed with her right now. She was a musician who was just flat out told by her family, no, you cannot do this in public. And so she continued to compose. Her greatest contribution actually were the salons that she ran in the 19th century, and how she was able to elevate and promote the music and the arts and the discussion of the time. So I'm hoping everybody will enjoy these pieces. The next set of pieces, as I said, are these preludes by James Morris. And James is he's a very, very fine pianist. He's actually a doctoral student of mine, but a very gifted composer. He just recently won the Music Teachers National Association National Composition Competition. He's had works commissioned by NATS, the National Association of Teachers of Singing, and has picked up commissions by the Colorado Symphony and various other things. His work is really drawing a lot of attention. These preludes, not only do I love them, but they also have a lot of advocates in the performing arts world. One of my colleagues took them to Brazil and performed them there. I've performed them in Italy. I've performed them all over the United States. He is really a composer to listen for. It's been a fascinating journey for me with these pieces because I know him so well, and I know what was happening in his life at the time that he wrote them. So I can hear all the different influences of maybe things that we were working on or events that he was experiencing at that time. He literally left the first book of preludes at my doorstep on my studio. I walked out the door and there was this pile of music sitting there. And I thought, what are these? And I read through them and said, these are really, really special. So I'm excited to bring them. This will be only the second performance of both books in their entirety. They're about 20 minutes. They're very short. But I think you're going to hear all kinds of great things in them. They're very sophisticated. They're poignant. They're fun. They're sparkly. So, and then the second half of the program, I'm starting, as I said, with this Busoni Carmen Fantasy. Ferruccio Busoni was an Italian pianist and composer, lived from 1866 to 1924, very formative figure in the early 20th century. And this is a sonatina he wrote after he heard Bizet's Carmen. It has all of the great themes and the habanera and everything else in it, and a flashy little piece. To talk more about the Melboni pieces, So her real name was Melanie Bony. And she lived in France, end of the 19th century, beginning of the 20th century, studied at the Paris Conservatoire. She had a very non-musical family, but a friend of theirs convinced them that she should go and take lessons with César Franck and go to the Conservatoire. And she did very, very well at the Conservatoire, but unfortunately fell in love with a young composer and poet and artist, and her parents immediately yanked her from school, and made her give up the affair. And then they arranged for her to marry a widowed businessman. This is a story that we hear so often with young composers and young musicians of the time. But she raised his two older children and had several children of her own, but she did continue to compose and really put herself out there as a composer as well. She was the secretary of the French Society of Composers. Her music is very pianistic, very influenced by Debussy and Fauré. And I think in her case, it was more a matter of her music no longer being in vogue after World War I. Rather than truly any kind of systemic, or discriminatory block against her music being disseminated. At the time, her music was being performed on programs all around France, Programme de Longue Revel, and Dukas and people like that. But certainly around the time of World War I, and we start seeing the rise of abstraction and expressionism and serialism, and her music doesn't fall into that category at all. And I think it was seen as being kind of old-fashioned. Her name was Melanie Bony. She wrote under the pen name Mel because she did not want people to judge her music by her gender. So, but these will be great pieces. And then, of course, as I said, the greatest pianist probably of the 19th century was Franz Liszt, and this is his transcription, as I said, of the last scene of Wagner's opera. It's one of my favorite pieces to play. So I was excited to put it on this program.
Let's talk about the broader theme of representation in classical music. While there has been progress in highlighting diverse composers, there's still work to be done. How do you see the landscape changing, and what role do performers play in this shift?
That's a big question. My hope is that the diversification of repertoire and classical music in general that began in the summer of 2020 really continues. I will say in my own experience, I spent 10 years studying at Juilliard at the end of the 20th century, and I never once heard about piano music by a woman composer or a composer of color, certainly not a Native American composer. It just wasn't covered in piano literature. It wasn't performed. It wasn't talked about. And so it's interesting that I'm on a faculty now where we're of the same generation and our studies looked very, very similar. And this is just not something that we thought about at all in our programming or in our teaching. And I think what has happened is that at the same time that we love the standard repertoire, but perhaps have gotten a little bored with it. I mean, I love the Chopin ballades, but I hear them all the time. So it happened all at once, I think, for some of us, that we thought, wow, there's a lot of other music out there that I would really like to hear. And now all of a sudden, the pool is getting bigger and bigger. The danger in trying to diversify the repertoire, I think, is tokenization. I'm going to make sure that I program a piece by a woman on this concert. I'm going to make sure that I program a piece by a Native American composer on this concert. I would rather that we think about how to put these programs together and find these great works, but look in that larger pool of, wow, I wonder if there are any pieces by women composers that would really fit into this program and this particular theme. I think we need to continue to seek out exceptional music. That's but where we seek it from can really be expanded. For me, I'm looking for music that communicates and speaks, that elicits emotional response, and that is thought provoking. And let's figure out how to put it into a program. As I said, I don't really program in themes. It's interesting that this whole theme has come together, but I program by threads. I try to find pieces. What are the pieces that I really love and really want to play right now? And what are the threads that come out of that piece that could help connect different things together? And how do textures work? And how do different time periods work? And how can I contrast and how can I put them together? And so even then, if you're trying to put standard repertoire together with more unusual repertoire, how can we view this standard repertoire through the lens of the unusual pieces that are around it, or vice versa? Um, I don't really like the idea of, well, you have to put some standard music on there in order for people to actually come to the concert. But I do think it helps to put more standard or more familiar music on the program, because it's hard to listen and learn about new things for that period of time, right? It's,
Yeah.
you're listening to all of this new to you information and trying to process it all. And sometimes it's kind of a relief to go, oh, thank goodness there's some Beethoven on this program and I know what that sounds like. So that's kind of ties together, how I program and how, what I think about diversification in repertoire in the performing arts. I'm very lucky to be in Colorado and to be at CU Boulder, where this is a real commitment of the college and also specifically the piano department. So I'm very glad that I'm here right now and being able to see this happen.
Sounds amazing. Sounds very freeing and amazing. Beyond your work as a performer, you're also an educator. You've taught at Ithaca College, a one-time masterclass at Manhattan School of Music, the New York University Piano Masterclass Series, Louisiana State University, go Tigers, and now at the University of Colorado. How do you instill in your students an appreciation for the diverse repertoire that you champion?
As I mentioned before, I'm lucky to be at CU Boulder, where this is part of our mission. One of the things that we're very lucky to have there is the Helen Walker Hill collection. Helen Walker Hill was one of the great scholars of music composed by Black women. And her collection is housed at the University of Colorado Boulder and at Columbia College in Chicago. And one of our piano professors has had an ongoing project for the past, I would say, 5 or 6 years called Hidden Voices, where he has had our students research the pieces that are in the archive collection and record them and talk about the historical context and the composer's life, and also the pedagogical aspects of the piece. And the point of this project is to disseminate these works to other piano teachers and other piano performers around the country. And so coupled with the piano faculty's own personal wish to really diversify the repertoire and be looking at these larger pools of music, we have that project going on. And it's really interesting to see what's happened. We do not have any requirements for auditions or juries or recitals that state that you must play a piece by an underrepresented composer. And yet our students all do it because they hear us doing it. They understand that we value it and that we place importance on learning about these composers and about these pieces. And so they just end up incorporating this repertoire. And especially what's the most exciting is that they're exploring this repertoire on their own. I have learned more from my students in the past 4 or 5 years, certainly than I ever did in my life before, about so many different composers and so many different kinds of music. And all of us have this attitude of, bring it in. I want to learn it along with you. And so I know a lot of schools have started actually requiring, that on people's degree recitals and juries, they must play pieces by, this type of composer. As I said, we haven't gone there yet. It's just been very interesting to see the synergy that is happening and to watch all of this grow. I, it's also a very fine line in terms of bringing students to the idea of diversification. Some students are very open about wanting to play pieces by underrepresented composers. Some students have backgrounds that are very different from that. They've been brought up very much on the standard canon. And, to them, Amy Beach is a very unusual and revolutionary composer. And that's fine. I think we really try to take people at the point that they come to us and say, great, let's expand a little bit from there. You don't have to go from, playing one piece by Amy Beach to playing an entire program of music by Native American composers, right? That may be a little too far for what you're used to. But I love it when my students come to me and say, I just realized that my entire program is very kind of Western European, centric, and I would like to add some different things to it. Great, here we go. So very exciting times.
You've performed all over the world, from major concert halls to intimate chamber music venues. Do you have a favorite memory or venue that stands out in your career?
I do. In 2018, I went as the featured guest artist to the Brancaleone Festival in Italy. And I actually flew there from New Orleans. I had been on the jury for the New Orleans International Piano Competition, and flew over to Italy, and they had me programmed to perform like the first or second night I was there. So I was so jet lagged. I had no idea what was going on. And then they said, well, you're not performing at the festival site. We're actually taking a trip to this nearby town called Fanu, and the performance is going to be there. And I said, great. Fine, go along for the ride. Well, it turned out it was at a cathedral, the Chiesa di San Francesco, which had been partially destroyed in, I think, one or two earthquakes that they had had. And so there was no roof to the cathedral. It was just the walls and this beautiful architecture. And it looked like something that the Three Tenors would sing in, fully produced. And so at night it was gorgeous because it was really under the stars and this beautiful ancient, partially constructed cathedral. And I had decided to play a couple of pieces by Grieg. And one of them was a lyric piece called Evening in the Mountains. And it was just so perfect to have this atmospheric piece, played out in the dark in this cathedral under the stars. So that was a really remarkable moment.
That sounds glorious. Absolutely glorious. This next question is always my favorite question to ask. For any students or anyone that is listening who are eager to enter the world of music research or performing internationally, what advice would you give them?
This is a really difficult question because the world in general, and specifically the world in performing arts and musical academia, is so completely different than it was pre-COVID, really. And things were changing fast, but things are completely different right now. And sometimes I feel a little at a loss as to how to truly advise my students, right? The recording industry is very different. Making CDs is not necessarily the path to go down because people aren't listening to CDs anymore. The ways in which music and performances are disseminated is completely different now than it was. So I had to do a lot of thinking about this question, and I think about it all the time. What I talk to my students about may not be my own best quality, but it's thinking outside the box. Right. And understanding that these traditional avenues probably aren't there anymore. But the importance of being a performer and being an educator and being a researcher and being involved in music is still there. And I just started reading about the study of neuroaesthetics and the effect that the arts have on humanity, on society, on the human body and the human brain. It's really pretty stunning. And so it's kind of rejuvenated a lot of thoughts and been very inspiring to think about. So we still need music, right? We still need the arts, very, very differently and but very definitely. So how can you share? How can you say what you want to say, and how can you share that with the world and make the world and make people better? Um, be open to new ideas and new people and new experiences, right? It's all different. And with the lockdown and with all of the online interaction that we had to have with COVID, it was all new experiences. None of us had any idea what we were doing. We were totally making it up, right? And our students were making it up, and we were just trying to figure all of this out. But I think it gave us a lot of resilience in a way if we take those experiences and say, okay, we did all this, we can do pretty much anything. You just have to be open to do it. So that's my biggest advice right now. I have always wanted to advise students to live their life as well, and to figure out how to turn their life experiences into their music. I teach my students what I try to teach my students is how to communicate from the piano what it is that they want to say. I don't teach them what to say necessarily, because they all have their own thing, but I can help you figure out how to do that at the piano, and how to make the pedal make the sound ring in a way that's going to project this way, and how to turn your phrase and that sort of thing. But I have to leave it to my students to figure out then how they're going to spread that to the rest of the world. So it's an interesting time.
That sounds incredible. I can only imagine what it's like to be one of your students with all of the passion that you teach. And I know a lot of your insights and genuineness. So I just love everything that you're talking about. Looking at your upcoming performance, what are you most excited about sharing with the audience at the Quick Center?
Oh, I'm just excited to share these pieces and these stories. I like to talk at my performances, and there will be slides and pictures. And I'm excited for people to hear some of the stories about these women, and to hear this music, and just to be able to share it. That's a short answer, but that's about it.
For people who may be newer to classical music or perhaps attending their first piano recital, what advice or insights would you offer them to help fully enjoy the experience?
That's part of why I like to do more interacting with the audience. And I do like to talk, and I do like to be able to show images and give people context so that they know what they're listening to. But if you have never been to a recital before or listened to this piano music, don't worry if you don't hear what you think you're supposed to, right? Just whatever experience you have is valid and true. I hope that you feel something. I hope that you enjoy something. I hope that you learn something from the program. But hopefully, I will walk everybody through it, so that they at least know where I'm coming from, where these pieces are coming from, and can understand a little bit more.
So finally, Jennifer, as someone who has dedicated her life to music, research, and education, what keeps you inspired and motivated in your work?
This was a really hard question, Rachel, and um, because of where I am personally, where the world is right now, where my students are, post COVID has been a very difficult time to teach. And the psychic burden of teaching has been very overwhelming. There are things in my personal life that have been very overwhelming right now. So it has been hard to be inspired, and it has been hard to be motivated. Um, And especially to be creative and to make music. It's been very difficult for the past few years. When you come home after teaching, having really helped your students with all of the things that they're going through in this new post-COVID world, there's not a lot of energy or space left, right? So I'm on sabbatical right now, which has been great. I've had the room to get excited about this program and be creative. And there's some pieces on this program I have never performed before. And, I'm in the middle of studying them and getting excited about them. I think what does keep me going and what makes me work through that is connection. Connection to the audience, connection with my students, the fact that there are things to communicate. And what I love most is when I see my students and when I see audiences and people have those eureka moments. When somebody comes to me and says, I will never again wear mascara to one of your recitals because all I do is cry the entire time, that makes me keep going. I am so glad that I can do that. As I said, I'm starting to get excited. It hit right at the right time for me to start learning about this, these neuroaesthetics or the neuro art studies and the real science behind all of that. That, maybe I am helping humanity in my own unique way. Some of my fascination with this too is, as you know, my husband is living with Parkinson's disease. He is a former opera singer and someone who loves to sing, and I am fascinated by what is happening as we see his disease progress. But what is happening with music for him, and the fact he's singing in a community choir and he sings at church all the time, and the brain is just a fascinating place to see the connections that he is able to make when all of this goes on, and then to start reading about this entire field of science that says, oh yeah, this is for real. So it certainly motivates me to keep going and bring this not just to my own family, but to help bring it to everyone and to teach my students how to do the same thing.
So before we close today, is there anything else that you would like to share with our listeners?
I don't know. I feel like I've shared an awful lot already. Just that I'm really looking forward to coming. This is it's not the first concert of my sabbatical, but it is my first traveling trip. I am absolutely thrilled to come back to New York State. I have obviously dear friends. Thank you, Rachel, for inviting me. I have a lot of family from New York State who are spread out throughout the state that I'm looking forward to seeing. I'm looking forward to trying out this version of the program. As I said, there are some new pieces in it that were not in previous iterations. And I just can't wait to hear what everybody thinks about this music. So
thank you so much for sharing your time, your passion, and your stories with us today. Your insights into artistry, history, and depth of classical music are really, truly inspiring. For our listeners, don't miss Jennifer Hayghe's upcoming performance, Girl Power, on February 23rd at 3 p.m. at the Regina Quick Center for the Arts. Tickets are available now at www.ticketor.com/quickarts. We're so grateful to present this event in partnership with Friends of Good Music. This is an afternoon you won't want to miss, celebrating the creativity and resilience of women composers and women's stories through Jennifer's extraordinary talent. Thank you for joining us, everyone, for this episode of What's Happening at the Quick. We look forward to seeing you at the Quick Center soon. Until next time, take care and keep supporting the arts.